So who would have thought the Still Yours episode falls on the week of NEC? Because we actually had a great freaking week. I'm in a good mood. It was amazing.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
I really feel revived, refreshed, renewed.
So you always have to have 3, you know.
Always. If you have 2 of the R's, then you gotta finish. You always gotta.
Well, it was nice that, I mean, I think 3 of anything, doesn't matter what letter it starts with, but it was nice that they all started with R. That you had some alliteration there, which was
a beautiful
nice.
Thing.
Which was really
But I mean,
nice.
it was legitimately like, I'm not just I wasn't making that up.
No,
Those
exactly.
are the 3 words that
I know.
that come to mind when I think about what we just did.
It sounded like a bit, you know, but it was not.
No.
It was completely genuine. It was actually.
I don't do bits. Okay, I don't do bits.
I guess that's my thing. Yeah,
that's your thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm learning from you though. Maybe you're rubbing off on me. NEC.
I don't know if that's good.
NEC.
Yeah.
Incredible.
NEC.
National Eucharistic Congress, for those of you who don't know what the acronym stands for.
Yeah. And look, if you know us, you know that we go to a lot of events. Yeah. So you have to understand that, like, for us to come home and even be talking about it is a pretty big deal. But for us to come back and say, like, wow, we had a deeply moving type of experience that you are going to remember for the rest of your life type of moment.
Like I would tell my grandkids about it kind of moment.
Yeah. Like that's not the norm. And that's what this week was.
Yeah.
There was truly a revival in my own personal, like I will share about like my own personal revival that I felt. Also, I just think for a lot of people, it was multicultural.
Yeah.
Also, like, not divided by subculture within the church. Like a lot of times these events are like, you know, you're super traditional people or you're charismatic renewal people or people who all participate in one specific ministry or whatever. So like, it's like
or even like young adults or adult or kids.
Right, exactly.
It's all
right. Like there's a million ways that you can divide a crowd.
Yeah.
But this was literally everybody.
Yeah.
All together. Young, old, traditional, charismatic.
Yeah.
There was no barriers, right? It was the whole church was invited.
From all over the country.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful.
And there was something, I think, for everybody in the sense that like a lot of the different parts of the body, if you will, were represented. You know, so they had multiple styles of music, multiple different styles of speakers.
I think there was a gospel choir for one of the masses one day. Like it was.
Yeah. You know, some orchestra stuff, a 4-part like harmony quartet. And it was amazing. And I don't know, again, we go to a lot of these. I wasn't expecting like a profound experience, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm just so over the moon that I had, like, I was actually drawn into prayer.
Yeah.
Like
same.
The vast majority of my prayer over the last couple of years has been very much like I have to be intentional about it. Like I'm choosing to do it.
Yeah.
Like I choose to like go to the gym or like I choose to eat healthy. Like I'm like choosing to do it. But this week was the first time in a long time where I was like, I felt drawn into prayer. Like I stepped into it. It's hard to describe.
Well, I mean, like you were saying earlier, like there's so many of these things that we do. Like we do events almost every other weekend, you know, so it can kind of feel like not old news, but it can kind of feel like, all right, we know the drill. We know what's going to happen. There's going to be a talk. And I mean, and it was in a traditional sense of like a conference schedule. It was very similar to the things that we've done in the past. But like, I personally think that the thing that made all the difference to me was the production. The way that the production team ran the whole thing. The sound was excellent. I mean, it was the best sound I've ever had at an event. The team was incredible.
Shout out Matt Walden.
Yeah. I mean, everything was like pointing literally to Jesus.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't distracting. It wasn't about like whoever's on stage, even though the screens were monstrous. If you see pictures of the screens and us like in front of it, it looks like we're little tiny Lego people. Like it was like the screens were so huge, but it all pointed to Jesus. It wasn't distracting. It all led to
Yes.
Christ.
We've worked with some great production companies, but this was totally another level. Shout out to Matt Walden, our buddy who kind of headed up the production thing. Yeah, maybe we'll be able to get him on here, although I know he prefers to stay in the background.
Yeah.
But he really had a vision from the beginning. And the way he said it to me was like, technology can aid the theology, or you can use technology to do theology. Basically, like there were times where even though the production was like larger than life, there were times where they cut it out completely. Like there was a time when like all 100 lights on the ceiling all moved at one time and centered in on Jesus and the monstrance, right? It was a Eucharistic revival. So the Eucharist was very much the center of the gathering.
Yeah.
And physically that was the case. It was like on the 50-yard line in the stadium, Jesus was at the center. And then all of the production, like anything that wasn't required, went off. Like it had this contrast, right? It went from like crazy opening, like Coldplay concert. I think even Coldplay's lighting guy might have been there. It was like Coldplay style concert, stadium completely lit up. And then when the time was right, it was like boom, and everything turned off, and just the lights went towards the monstrance. So that's the thing, is like that was production teaching us what this moment was. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Teaching us who Jesus is and who he should be, like the center of our lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm still like just riding on cloud 9 from it, truly. And that's rare for me to say that. Again, we've done this for how many years now? Almost 15 years.
Yeah.
Full-time in ministry. So for an event like that to be so meaningful to both of us and so many people that were there, I just feel like the response has been insane. You know, just people processing it online and all of us just feeling like it was a mountaintop kind of moment we will not soon forget.
Yeah.
So really grateful for that.
Yeah. So it was great. And then you were here talking about Still Yours.
Yeah.
Which is the song for this week.
Yeah. Good song.
This is like a really just general song that represents claiming who you are, claiming your identity, reminding yourself of your identity. And I don't want to say it's like basic or cliche. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying like it's a wide spectrum of experience.
There's a lot of different directions you can talk about, honestly, with this song.
Right. And I think a lot of them take us into another
other song
naturally.
Territories.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, which is why it makes sense that it's the radio single, actually, because it kind of embodies the album.
Right.
The song that was sent to radio. Yeah.
Right.
Kind of represents the album in a sense. Yeah.
Right. It is a good representation of what the album is about.
Yeah.
And I think it's about identity. For me, it's about like just reminding, it's kind of stepping into that and reminding yourself of your identity and kind of claiming it. So reminding yourself who God is and who you are.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that I always say when I lead worship, actually, is that worship songs are songs of remembrance. They're songs that remind us of those two truths. Remind us who we are and who God is, which are two things that we so easily forget or get distracted from remembering. Yeah, this is one of those songs that claims those things, declares those things, and reroots yourself in that truth, really. It's
also like an identity that is secure. You're not insecure about it. Like, you know, there's a line where you say, none of my questions ever scare you away. It does beg the question, like, are we allowed to ask questions? Are we allowed to have doubts? Is our relationship with God secure enough that we will let ourselves have a thought if it comes to mind and not panic about it and go, what is this thought I'm having?
Yeah.
Like, let me bring that to the light. Let me explore. Let me try to discover what you know, because I believe that God is in everything. And I believe that he wants to reveal himself. He doesn't want to remain hidden.
Yeah. Neither does he want us to remain hidden. It's this mutual exchange of vulnerability. And
so like, none of my questions ever scare you away. Like, if you're saying, I won't ask questions because I'm afraid of what'll happen. If you're saying, I won't ask questions because I'm afraid you'll leave me, I'm afraid it'll make you see me differently, that's not a healthy relationship.
Right.
That doesn't sound like freedom.
No. Yeah. Is love never questioning?
Right. I don't think so.
I don't think so. Then we wouldn't have a loving relationship because I question you all the time. No,
excuse me. Thou shalt not question thou husband. Is that what it is?
Didn't we take a vow of that? No, just kidding. No, but seriously, like that's such a beautiful way of putting it. Love should be the safest place for us to bring our questions.
Right. To be authentic, to be honest, to be ourselves.
The place where we should feel our freest and most open and most exposed, you know, like because we entrust ourselves and trust the other
in a childlike way.
Yeah. But also like, I don't know if we've said this in the podcast before, and I'm sure people have heard it before, but like the idea of that vulnerable means to be woundable.
Right.
Like when you are vulnerable with another person, when you are in a loving relationship with another person, you are exposing yourself in a sense that you are woundable.
Right. You're letting your guard down in some way.
You're letting your guard down.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the buttons that you could push for me. You know the things that you could say to me.
Right.
To completely dismantle my life, honestly.
Right.
But I trust you to not do that.
Right.
Because
Right.
I love you and
Right.
you love me.
Right.
And the same is true for our relationship with God. But like, how often is it feels like it's not that. It feels like we have to be perfect, or we have to have it all together, or we have to like hide behind, not to go Adam and Eve, but like hide behind the fig leaves almost, to be like, oh, you don't need to see that part of me, or I'm not going to show you that side because what's going to happen if I show you that?
Yes.
It's really hard to be exposed to God. It's really freaking hard.
If you have that trust kind of damaged, then it can be even harder. Then you throw up even thicker walls. You know, you just one fig leaf isn't enough. You're like, turn around, you run, you know what I mean? Like, that's interesting, right? Because God comes into the garden, and I don't want to butcher the scripture. I believe that at least in the subtext, if not in the text, is the idea that God comes in and is like, why are you covering yourselves?
Yeah.
You know, he's like, you don't have to hide from me.
Yeah.
You know, I made you. I've you know what I mean? I've seen you. I know you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, don't be ridiculous. Like, literally, like, why would you hide from me? But we do.
So I love that line in this song. I want to grow up with a faith like a child, unlearn the fear, and run back into the wild. And then the next line, oh, Father, help me remember. So it's really, it's about remembering and having that faith like a child.
I love that line too. And the idea of like growing up into a faith like a child.
Right.
Like not a childish faith. But a childlike faith.
Yes.
One that is full of wonder and awe and expectation and trust and resting in the arms of the Father, believing that he's at work for our good. I mean, like all these Christianese statements that we just say all the time, but like actually believing it, actually like living it day in and day out, which is just, I think it's going to take me a lifetime to do that. I think I've just resigned myself to the fact that that's just going to take a lifetime. It's not an easy, today I'm going to choose that and then I'm set for life. You know,
totally.
Like everything in faith.
I think the lines right before, sometimes I wonder where the wonder has gone.
Right.
Sometimes I wish I felt the joy in my song I once did way back when.
Yeah, I like how you're quoting me, my own song.
I know.
Like,
sorry, it is kind of weird to read the words back to you.
No, it's good. It's good.
There are times when it's not so great. And the times when it's not so easy. You're not feeling the joy. You're not feeling the excitement, the wonder, very much like disillusioned, you know, or dry or just whatever. That happens too, you know? So, but that's why we say, help me remember in the good times and the bad. Help me just remember who you are and who I am.
Yeah. The identity piece.
The identity piece. You know, I think that's what's happening here. It reminds me of when I lived at Cove Crest. For those who don't know, it's a retreat center. And it's a holy place.
Magical.
And it's like it's one of the only places I've ever been, if not the only one, where I genuinely think of it as sacred ground. Like it's earned that title. It's just hard to describe. I think a lot of people, regardless of your religion, you might kind of understand how places can just be special. You know, so people call them thin places, you know, where the veil between heaven and earth is thin, you know, and maybe it's where there's portals. I don't know, man. We can get weird. It's a really special place, and I got to live there for a year in college, and there was this idyllic little white chapel. It was just, if you imagine like from a movie, like a little wooden white chapel by a creek with a big tree with big, you know, branches.
I think it's my favorite place in the world to pray, truly.
Yeah.
Of all the churches we've been to, I think that little white chapel might be my favorite.
Yeah, it's great. It's been in movies actually, so it's just this really idyllic place. But anyway, as you know, you've been there. There's this stained glass window, and it has Jesus holding a lamb up to his chest. So some days, you know, you're in the chapel for 2 hours, you know, and over the course of the day and over the course of the week and the month and the year, you just look around at stuff. So I don't even know how many hours I spent looking at this stained glass window. At one point, I just had this realization that Jesus is holding the lamb up to his chest, and the lamb is listening to the heartbeat. You know, I mean, at least this is conjecture, obviously, but that's what I imagine was happening in this portrayal on the stained glass window is like, that's what we're doing in the chapel. Our head is up to his chest. He's the shepherd. You know what I mean? He's the good shepherd. And we put our heads up to his chest and we listen for his heartbeat. and we try to line up our heartbeat with his and live our lives to the rhythm of his heartbeat. Like, I think that must be what it means to follow someone, right? You know? And to be one, you know, to the communion that we're called to with him.
Beautiful.
So that was what we were doing there in that chapel. And so the reason it reminds me of this song is because I remember one of my mentors there, he told me just to make sure that no matter what I did, I got my identity from what happened. The way he said it was like, get your identity from before 8 a.m. Because, you know, we was usually spent from like 7 or 8 or whatever in the chapel. So he was like, let that time in the morning in the chapel, let that be where you get your identity. And anything that happens after that, you're going to have ups and downs. You know, I remember I got this one big responsibility at the time that I was totally not prepared for and not feeling deserving of. And I was like, I really got to have my stuff together. And there was a lot riding on it. And every morning I was in there and I would think about that, like this time right here, no matter what happens after, whether like everything I do is a huge win or whether everything I do is a total flop today, like my identity is going to come from this time right here in the morning.
That's really challenging, honestly, for me to hear, because all of us can't live at Cove Crest. Not all of us have access to a chapel every day and a beautiful stained glass. I mean, some people have a chapel in their home. Maybe we should think about doing something like that. But it also just challenges me. Like this morning, I woke up and the first thing that I did was look at my phone. The first thing I did was look at my email. The first thing I did was go on social media.
It's killer.
The first thing I did was look to that to tell me who I am. And you know what's so funny about it is that today I did that and I heard it in my heart. I heard it in my being. What are you doing looking there for? Like just a gentle, it wasn't anything like accusatory. It was just like, what are you doing?
Right.
Because you can be the strongest person in the world and still look on social media and see this person's doing this and this person's just released this song and this person's going on this tour and this person's doing blank and literally just feel like crap immediately.
Right.
Immediately, as soon as you wake up. And it's like, that is just it's just challenging to me. It really makes me think I have to rework the way that I do my life and the priorities that I have and actually like put into practice some boundaries when it comes to this stuff.
Right.
And I know that there's people out there who experience the same thing. It's just a terrible trap to fall into, and it's so easy to do.
You know, you want to be able to be happy for people. Right. Like, and I know that you are like, that's the thing. Like anyone who knows you would know that, like, you are thrilled when anybody else in the industry
gets a win.
Like, so it's like, we do want to celebrate other people, but when
a win for one is a win for all, really.
Yeah,
Truly.
totally. There is the other side of that though. When you're just bombarded with it first thing in the morning, there is a weird potential that it has. I've noticed that later on in the day, I don't react to it the same way. But if I wake up and the first thing I see is everybody else in my industry or in whatever industry just crushing it when I'm feeling like things are kind of going rough for me that day, it's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, know thyself.
Exactly.
Literally know thyself.
Know thyself. Just
know what's going to trigger you.
Don't
know
hit yourself
what's going to make it worse.
First thing in the morning.
Yeah.
But I love that invitation part that you said, God inviting you back and saying, hey, you don't have to go there. Why don't you talk to me?
Why don't you come to me first?
You know, and I'll remind you who you are. Come and pray.
Yeah.
Come and be reminded that I love you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, let me be your source of strength to go into the day.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to start here, you know? And so even if you're reading something like, I had this quote from Saint Benedict written down, Pope Benedict. He said, each of us is the result of a thought of God. Each of us is willed. Each of us is loved. Each of us is necessary. To me, that's like the fruit of prayer. Just like knowing and believing your identity, that's like the fruit of prayer. Obviously, Pope Benedict XVI prayed a lot.
Yeah.
You know, he was a smart and holy dude.
Yeah.
To say the least.
I mean, that reminds me of the bridge of this song, though. Yours and yours forever, loved, adored, and treasure. Help me to remember that. That's never going to change. That's exactly it. Starting and ending your day in that place.
Finding that place of peace.
Yeah.
That place of belonging. That place of being seen and known
tethering
and
yourself
loved. Yes.
to the truth.
Right.
And to God.
Right. Otherwise, what the winds and the storm and everything else is going to come and wreck your, you know what I mean? Wreck your life, dude. I mean,
literally, yeah.
You can get thrown off.
Yeah.
So it's something about just reminding yourself and claiming that.
Yeah.
And so I think the song, it's not supposed to be super niche. You wanted a song that you wrote it for radio in the sense that you wanted it to be a song that multiple people.
Yeah. That if someone's just randomly hearing it on a radio station, what's this?
Yeah.
She's saying some real stuff. I think that's the other side of the song that I just want to mention. That's meaningful to me because of what I've been walking through over the last few years of just like really struggling with faith and struggling with my ability to connect with God, at least the feeling of that, right? I think that is really jarring to your identity. I don't think I've realized until we're even talking about it right now how jarring that was to me, because my identity for so long was in, I'm connected to God. I feel him. This is who I am. I'm a Christian. I've never doubted. I've never questioned. I've never struggled in that way. And then all of a sudden it was the exact opposite. I was faced with like, who am I if I can't hear him? Who am I if I can't feel him? Like, what does this mean for me? It's earth shattering.
Yeah.
It's ground shaking. You know what I mean? Like the same thing, but it's terrifying. But that's the part of the song that again is like the remembrance piece. It's reminding yourself that literally nothing, including yourself, whether you feel it or not, whether you're struggling or whether you're deeply in love with God and you've never felt him more, and everything in between, that this is the reality, that you are still his, no matter what. That like Romans 8 says, there is nothing that can separate us from the love of God. Trying to believe that and making an act of faith. That's what this song really is to me.
Right.
It's an act of faith, ultimately, in the midst of, for me, a season that was like the darkest night I've walked through, you know? The identity piece mixed in with this other like faith is complicated and messy part of the story.
Yeah.
All together, which is really the record.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Interesting. I never honestly, until today in this conversation, I never really thought about Still Yours that way. Really? I mean, yeah, I liked it. I never really realized why it was the radio single. I never really realized, it actually does really represent the themes of the record and like the journey of the record pretty well.
And just the journey of the Christian life and just being real about it, trying to be real about it.
Well, it's interesting that you said all that, because you're right. It can be when your identity is like, you know, you look at who God is and it reminds you of who you are in light of who he is.
Right.
You know, think of all the rotten fruits, so to speak, of that. When you're really bitter about something that someone's done to you, you know, you're probably not living totally in that complete peace of knowing who you are in God's eyes. You know, when you're jealous of what somebody else has, you're probably not really living in that
the fullness of
in the fullness of, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's not like a judgmental thing. I mean, I'm there all the freaking time.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, the rotten fruits of it are clear. You know what I mean? Like when you don't know who you are and what you're striving for and who you are and what your purpose is and all that kind of thing, like you can have some really dark days without those things, because those are the things that help you through the dark days.
Back to remembrance, man. This is a song of remembrance. It really is. It's beautiful in that way. Yeah, Still Yours. It's a great song. It's been a great week. This was a really great conversation, and I hope you guys got something out of it. Yeah.
And sorry we kept you so long. We had to tell you about the NEC. And then we had a lot to say tonight about this freaking song.
Yeah.
So I hope people out there go listen to it. We're going to go listen to it and eat dinner right now.
Oh, speaking of that, I hope the chicken didn't burn. Also, if you are enjoying this podcast, would you do us a favor? And what's the thing that people say?
Smash that like button.
Leave us a review, because we want to hear if you're liking it, because I honestly have no idea if anyone's listening.
Yeah.
And if you're liking it, if you have questions for us for other future songs, like we'd love to answer some of your questions. You know what I mean? So comment on...
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Comment
I don't know
on
about
one of our
reviewing
posts.
us.
Oh, really?
I mean, if you think we suck, just don't listen.
Just like, yeah.
Because we're figuring this thing out.
That's true. Okay, that's fine.
But but you know.
But reviews are how other people find it, and I do think it's worth other people finding it.
I see what you're saying. Okay, I got you.
So give an honest review. That's okay. But truly, like, If you want to submit your questions, you could submit them to info@sarahkroger.com. If you have a podcast question, just type in the subject line, No Filters Podcast. I'm making this up on the spot. This is what's happening. info@sarahkroger.com, and send us your questions and we'll maybe answer them on future episodes.
All right. I like it. We'll give it a whirl.
All right.
Well, thanks, everybody. Still yours.